Hello and welcome to the Watson Weekend. We are your hosts. I'm Rick Watson.
Hi, it's Jessica Listowski. If you don't know us by now, come on.
Boom! Yes, this is your weekly dose of medicine with just enough sugar to make it go down well. Our goal here is to be your go-to place for the world of retail, technology, e-commerce, all the things.
All the things. You also can catch us basically anywhere and everywhere you love to consume content. We don't
Yes,
discriminate. We are on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music. So if you're a Prime member, you get that for free. No
Joe's
excuses.
Garage podcast platform.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. So like us, chat us up, send it to all your friends and family. We are here to serve. Right, Rick?
Yeah, we are. And speaking of here to serve, I had more than my fair share of soup dumplings last night, which my
Mm,
stomach was not used to. It was a
nice.
fantastic dinner.
Yeah.
I'll
How's
I'll
that
stop.
MSG treating you?
I'll stop there.
Yeah. How's the MSG treating you today? A little, are your hands
So
swollen? Does your
good.
ring fit?
I'm shake. I have the shakes.
All
I have
right.
the
All right. We're gonna get you some like vitamins or something to smooth you out, reset.
exactly. We have a special show today. We're going to be talking with two industry luminaries, Casper Rasmussen, who's the president of the Mach Alliance and SVP at Valtech, and the co-founder and co-CEO of VTEX, Mariano um, de Faria. He posted an item that was sort of heard around the world, and we're going to be running that in a minute after the headline hangover. But first, wanted to give a shout out to Miracle, who's hosting, helping us put on the show. For us, like traditional e-commerce, there are a lot of retailers not growing. We think a lot of people can do better than that. Miracle has a platform that's used by 450 retailers with AI automation for marketplace dropship and retail media all in one place. So I think it could accelerate a lot of people out there. So thank you again, Miracle, for sponsoring the show.
That's right. Yep. Check them out. Thank you, Miracle. Thank you for bringing this fine program
Yes,
every Friday.
fine
Fine,
programming.
fine piece of journalism.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we're going to get into our headline hangover, which is also brought to us by Passport. And I think the first story you're going to kick us off with, Rick, is a recap of what happened at the lead. There was some kind of tariff feud situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of craziness happening. The lead is an event. So we're going into the headline hangover. Thank you, Passport, for doing for sponsoring our show here. Going up here, overheard on Pier 36. First of all, this is the furthest show, I think, on the Manhattan Island from my apartment in the Upper West Side. Still, it's a great networking event. The show is a little bit more boutique and smaller than some of the huge shows out there, like an NRF at Javits or
Mhm.
at Shop Talk in Vegas, where it's easy to sort of get lost there. Everyone is in one place. That's something that's out there. I gave a talk on one of the panel discussions about social commerce with some good friends, David Cost and David Baker. Um, so mostly talking about TikTok Shop and influencers. We're
Ah,
actually going to bring David Baker back to talk about that uh, soon.
I can't
So
wait. It's such a hot topic. And with people spending more and more time on their phones, the popularity of TikTok, we know that that's been a game changer in social
yeah,
commerce. It's kind of been the coming we've all waited for. You know, Instagram, Facebook, the metaverse has teased social commerce in a meaningful way. And most of that happens offline with influencers driving traffic to Amazon or somewhere else. And it feels like TikTok Shop really is doing more with live shopping. So I can't wait to see and hear more about that.
yeah, it's exciting there, but I think even more so, I did one of my crazy events Wednesday night. We hosted with the help of our friends at Passport, who are also sponsoring the Headline Hangover this week, coincidentally. Um, we were at actually a bar that um, is in Chinatown. We had about 50 people there. We did a Terra Feud event focused on cross border We actually have a few photos of the event. It looks quite a bit brighter in these photos because we have really great post production.
Nice.
But
Little lightning,
so
light.
yeah, if you look at that strange character in the center there with the
Uh-huh.
microphone, that's me.
Yeah, you kind of look like you and your jacket and the tablecloth are just one meld.
It's matching. I'm wearing the tablecloth. I think.
Yeah. And
I'm like,
what's with the wig? Is this like Betty White? Is this supposed to
uh,
be so it's like a Family Feud situation,
yeah, it's not
right?
Steve Harvey.
Okay. Yeah, you can't be Steve Harvey.
No. It's a little bit more of a Richard Dawson vibe, a later Richard
I see.
Dawson.
Okay, later Richard
Yeah,
Dawson. Yeah, I like
exactly.
that. Were you like kissing people on the mouth? Because Richard
No,
Dawson kind of had a little bit of a
no,
reputation for some,
no,
that's how it's
no.
just a little peck.
Yeah, it was
That's how he
50%
greeted
tongue.
everyone.
It was
Yeah.
50% tongue with Richard.
Sweet. Yeah,
A
this was pre me too. So yeah.
100%.
Okay, I'll move on. Sorry, I'm derailing. But yeah, no, the event looks fantastic. I love the way you guys approach these events because you do bring a community together. And so, what were some of the things that were kicked around
Yeah,
there?
some of the
What were
big
the topics
themes we talked about two major things. One is who's the best fit for cross border, and
today?
a lot of things it's the confluence of sort of three major things. One is medium to high margin business because it obviously it takes a large amount of money to ship something across the world, and if your
Hmm.
shipping costs and duties and tariffs are so high, then there's no reason you're going to
Yeah.
try to buy it locally. That's
Yep.
one. Second is if the product is locally scarce, meaning you can't find the product around you, it's more likely you're going to go buy it from a retailer in the UK or
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
opposite. Someone in the UK is going to buy it from the US, etc.
Yeah.
Um, Also, the fact that your brand is known is helpful. I think
Mhm.
this has changed over time. Like the great thing with sort of all the chat GPTs is, but as well as just the Google initially is like any brand right now is global by default, which
Sure.
means that a global consumer could find you and suffer a bad buyer experience. So the more you have people inbound searching from you for different companies, the more you should want to invest more in cross border, meaning like
Hmm.
localize your website for cultural preferences for those shoppers,
Yeah.
or provide shipping options that arrive on time and don't surprise the buyer with duties and taxes, or
I
things
love
like
that.
offer payment methods that the buyer has ever heard about, for instance. Like
Right.
those things are super helpful.
Yeah, it goes back to fundamentals. We've talked about
Yeah,
this a lot on the show, that a lot of people want to jump to let's go like chase after the cool shiny
yeah,
thing, but we're just talking really good cross-border fundamentals,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
executing on those extremely well. So, okay, well, I look forward to unpacking that a little bit more. Anything else you want to say on the tariff feud before we go on to the next
No,
story?
I think we could go on. We're gonna release a full video, and so look for that over at emails and the socials,
Okay.
also. So
Okay, awesome. Well, there was one thing that's just near and dear to my heart, as you know, Rick, and you love earning season as much as I love earning season. I like to follow, what's happening in the retail world.
mm,
You love e-commerce. I know you love retail too, but you
yeah,
certainly have been noted for the Shopify recaps that you do and just how well you articulate the earnings. What's happening in the earnings land is what we're calling, you have clearance.
mm,
It is guidance ultimately being ditched because of this uncertainty in the macro environment. Certainly there's tariffs, there's consumer spending pullback, a forecast of a recession depending on who you talk to. And so companies like American Eagle, Ross, Crocs, Mattel, Steve Madden, Krispy Kreme, of all people,
wow.
Deckers, have been pulling back on guidance and saying,
Mm,
hey, no more. We don't necessarily have the fortitude or the trajectory. No one's Nostradamus over here to figure out what is going on in the world in a way that we feel confident in giving you guidance. And therefore, we're pulling back, we're not doing it. Which I think is sort of interesting when you have trained the street to
mm.
essentially expect that from you. What does that say, about, are you investable, or should they put their dollar there? Should they be holding out and waiting as
Mhm.
well? So I know you have a hot take on this too, but I do think it's interesting in the sense of it's not necessarily going to give people a lot of confidence that they should keep, buying and buying what you're selling, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the week after Liberation Day that things had sort of settled down a little bit. It seems
Mhm.
like this week things are back in chaos land again. Who knows? Like, I defy anyone to name like what the current tariff rate is to all the countries. I think the board that Trump rolled out initially is a little bit out of date at this point. He needs to update a new board. Maybe he should get a digital board
Oh, yeah.
with like a ticker symbol there.
That
But
sounds
if you
good.
look, if you're a CEO in this times, the idea is that this disappointing Wall Street is a bad idea. And so
Hmm.
why are companies doing this is because it affects their stock price. And so better to get the bad, quote unquote bad news that like, hey, we told you we're going to hit this profit for the year. But ultimately, I think investors kind of understands because everyone else doing it is a little bit of a herd mentality
Sure.
from there. And the good news, bad news for these sorts of years is that you could potentially take more risks than an average year. For
Hmm.
instance, like the year the COVID pandemic hit, it was like everyone thought the world was going to hell in a handbasket. So, like, why not start that new project? Because at least it gave you sort of a little bit cover to do some new and exciting things that you may not have done otherwise.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Or clean up bad business practices that you
Yeah,
didn't want to take the hit on, but you're like, look, now's the time we're taking hits on the
right.
P&L.
Exactly.
Anyway, if it impacts top line, but we might get some EBITDA goodness, cool, we'll do it exit stage right, this thing that's been hanging over our head for a while. So we'll certainly be watching this and seeing in the as the world turns of tariff town
Yeah.
if things turn around, but it'll be pretty interesting. So all right, well, we've, like you said, we've got a pretty exciting take on the world of e-commerce and platforms and this world that we call the Mach Alliance. So I'm going to let you lead us in, Rick, on what our audience is about to see.
Yeah, we're gonna more or less just run it, but this was all started. VTEC was a member of the Mach Alliance and famously published a post calling out the Mach Alliance for not delivering on all its promises. This led to like I don't know, something like a couple of hundred comment thread, which is like, obviously in the e-commerce world, it's a little bit of a tempest in a teapot. It's kind of a um, closed group, but it's really relevant because there are a lot of large retailers that use the platforms, the system integrators, and the architecture patterns that are talked about here. And so I think it's relevant to a lot of technology um, implementers, architects, and related companies, uh, in particular the system integrators and vendors that are in this ecosystem, want to hear what's going on. They want to understand like where is the community evolving to. So I wanted to sort of roll it and allow. I'll be commenting, so definitely feel free to comment on our live discussion. It is a recording, but I think it'll be exciting to take a look.
That's great. All right, let's roll it.
You started to talk about Mach and the Mach Alliance being a platform. Like, this is a community effort. Like, if we want the industry to wake up, if we want the environment to be easier for who we serve collectively, the businesses and the end consumers of those, we need to stand together. Like, I think there is a big community component in this. And you heard my speech as well, Rick.
We are here with the podcast they said would never happen. I'm here with um, two luminaries in the enterprise architecture space. First, we have Casper Rasmussen, who's the Group Chief Transformation Officer at Valtech and President of the Mach Alliance, and also Mariano Gomide de Faria, the founder and co-CEO of VTEC. So, welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Anything else I missed that you want to add?
I guess two people passionate about technology and business impact.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right. So I think the start of the conversation, I think the you know is really kind of the post heard around the world from Mariano about enterprise architecture, but wanted to get back to the beginning of when you both thinking about enterprise architecture and being enterprise architecture self. Are you even talking about the same thing? How would you define enterprise architecture, period. Maybe let's start with Casper, and then I'll flip who I asked some of the questions.
Yeah, no, of course. Enterprise architecture specifically is holistic technology thinking and capability design, right? And this is to create a full business canvas that goes from operation to innovation across the entirety of the business. On the flip side, you also have technology for enterprises, which is about stability, proven, and trustworthy technology in the market. So I just want to separate that two and say enterprise architecture on one side and then technology for the enterprise on the other side.
Got it. Mariano, how would you define enterprise architecture, and like what's the conversation about?
Yeah, it's a good start of our kind of discussion. There is a combination of softwares, not only in the commerce atmosphere. Let's just remember that 50% of the budget of retailers all over the world is a mainframe, right? So the architect for enterprises starts on how they organize the customer data and they interact with customers. And today is like multiple layers of interactions. And it's not a commerce. We should discuss enterprise by discussing the necessity of mainframes, by the necessity of DWs, CDPs, and all of these. Because actually, for me, the architecture of enterprise means the architecture is serving the silos of people or is it serving the business itself. And for me, that's the big discussion. That is not in the table, and we need to bring it in.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess let's talk about, is the problem, we talk about the silos. I mean, silos exist for a reason in enterprise, in that you generally have a team that wants a system for a task, right? The warehouse team wants a system that represents the warehouse well, because they know that the marketing system doesn't have anything about warehouses in it, and so each team tends to inherit its own tool. So talk to me. I'll follow up on your question, Mario, and like push a little bit on this idea of silos. Is there any way to actually eliminate the silos, or is it more an integration question you're getting at?
So it's more ego.
Hmm.
We are still having a retail and brand manufacturer and actually distributors discussing to give kind of increased compensation by increasing the name of the title, and that world still exists. So the
Sure.
ego of each manager says that I am special. I want the software to call my own because I don't trust IT to do what I need, and I know much more than them. They don't know business. That's the reality. But actually, business became technology. So that's a kind of a misunderstanding in between the ego. And if we see the companies like Lululemon that are like like having all the
Yeah.
market by surprise, right? It's because they are almost a egoless kind of corporation, pretty well executed. And the ones that are failing are the ones that gives too much kind of ego
Right.
allowance for the mid management and the areas itself. So not just adding one thing more, not only the architecture, the org chart
Hmm.
is old. The way you manage like marketing,
Yeah.
sales, operations, HR, legal, finance, this is not appropriate for the time that we are living. So
Yeah.
the architecture starts with the org chart. So if we diminish, if we sorry, if you decommission the org chart as it is right now, you're gonna pursue simplicity.
Yeah. Obviously, as technologists here, it seems like you're bleeding a little bit into Conway's law. You ship your org chart. It represents the um, the structure of your website, and how your services are factored, and it really had anything about how you do business. Spaces, like you have 5 teams, you'll have 5 menu buttons. Is that how you see it, Casper, or are there things that we're missing about the idea, the blockers between architecture and how the application is structured versus the need for enterprises to innovate and what gets in the way of it?
So I wholeheartedly agree on the ego statement that you made, Mariano. And I also thought of Conway's law as you described it, because there is a one-to-one behavior between how you're organized and how your technology estate look. It's evidenced, it's proven.
Right.
It's tested and it's real, and we need to acknowledge that. And the more we can orient teams and leaders around impact and outcome, the more your architecture will become customer and business centric.
Mm-hmm.
We're all talking business language, we're all talking revenue, we're all talking cost efficiency all day. And to fight egos, we need to talk partnership. And this goes leaders in between. No one in an org diagram are going to solve all of the business problems that exist. It has to be joined, it has to be joined up, and it also needs to be driven through mutual accountability and partnership. Whether you're at a C-suite or you're sitting in middle management, there is mutual accountability at play. And I think alignment happens by setting objectives and by driving people towards impacts and re-platforms. And this notion of needing to move away from a legacy system, you know what the easiest solution to that is? Turn it off. That's not an objective. Impact, growth, efficiency is objectives in this world, right?
Yeah.
And we need to think that way. That's business thinking. It's business acumen.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to one of the things mentioned in Mariano's post about needing to evolve into like a practical solution for the future, things that were pragmatic, outcome oriented, human centric, although I might have some quibbles with this in the age of AI, and then flexible but practical. It sounds like we're both sort of speaking from the same sheet of music in terms of where the enterprise should be going. Is that fair?
Yeah, I believe so. The the definition of freedom for me is the ability of decompose, not the ability of compose. You know, like when you compose and you do in a way that you cannot get rid of it, that's not informed freedom, agility, or that's actually you are attaching yourself to something that we call like we attach ourselves to the failure, because we will start to defend every single piece that we have attached before. But if we architecture in the way that you can decompose easily, oh, let's switch PIM, let's switch payments, let's switch that, and I'm talking about in 1 week time, in 10 days time, then that's what the enterprise needs, because today, it was already bad before all this Trump thing, and with the tariffs now is even worse. So the only thing that the enterprises in retail, brand manufacturing, distributors right now they are looking for is say flexibility. I need to be flexible in my business outcomes, in my distribution channels, and in my inbound product channels. And the only way for them to achieve that is to have a architecture that allows them to just turn on, turn off, without the like heavy weight of customization.
And we need to recognize too that there is a mindset at play here. And let me see if I could get this right. It's not enough simply to build the thing right. That's architecture, right? That's structure. It's the right level of technology thinking. It's about building the right thing. There is a mindset around incremental impact. There is a mindset around asking why, understanding the problem you're about to solve before you find the solution. So there is a big mindset at play to make sure you're not building tech for tech. You're not just driving architecture complexity. You're not just repeating the failures of the past. So building the right thing is a mindset that also needs to be kind of institutionalized within enterprise architecture, right? So it doesn't just become about scaffolding or structure or governance.
Yeah, on these, just to give you an example, Casper, and it's a very interesting thing, Casper. The posts kind of reverberate a lot, and people said like, "Oh my goodness, you should hate each other," and say, "Look, we are before that. We know each other, respect ourselves a lot. Second, we are great partners. Valtech is one of the biggest partner of VTEX. Third, it's just a one disalignment that's all those conversations. So no hard feelings at all. Like the moment I post, I call him, and at the end of the day, these example that I want to bring, it's on these one CEO of a big CEO of a big $1 billion company that uses VTEX. He called me and say, "Oh, we're gonna turn off the search, and we're gonna test an external search." And I say, "Fine, that's okay." And I say, yeah, but you need to give me 30% discount on the platform because I'm using an external search. And say, no, I can give you 3%. That's what search represents in the overall cost of the platform. And say, no, cannot be. And I say, why not? I say, no, because the provider asked me 12 people to manage the new search, and that's a lot of money. And I say, yes, that's why the composability needs to comes with sales or profitability commitments. And this guy did something incredible. He started to put in the IT to pay commission on the delta of sales and the delta of margin. So the IT organization receives commission if they increase sales and increase profitability. And that drives, like Warren Buffett says that, right? If you want people to do what you want, pay them accordingly to what you want. So, and that the results of these retail, it's really good. So
But
this is something.
that's the mutual accountability I talked about before, right? It's skin in the
Yes.
game.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
no one works in an organization
Right.
simply to build silos or build structure. Like
Yeah.
it's not how the world works. We're all
Yeah.
accountable to what's best for the company, and that means mutual accountability
Yeah.
to what matters.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think that can happen not just between companies, but within companies. We talked about the idea of throwing it over the wall, which is kind of a well-worn pattern between the business and IT. And we talk about working together and getting on the same page, but we've seen it happen rarely or not enough. And so in that situation, you're in one of these companies. Who's failing in that situation where you have a throw it over the wall culture, and IT is then incented to build sandcastles or silos, or how, and the business team is sometimes incented to like hand it over to IT, advocate responsibility, and then blame them later. I guess I'm describing an anti pattern a little bit, obviously, but I think we've all been in these situations. Who's the failing in this situation?
I have one bet is the board. The board is an antique, not say other words. Majority of the
We
boards.
could say the words here, Mariano.
I like antique.
Majority of the board members of retailers and brand manufacturers all over the world, if you ask them how many of you can do a query, I guess that we are talking about less than 5%. In a world that's talking about AI,
Yeah.
that's not good enough.
So
So
Mariano thinks it goes all the way up to the board. What do you think, Casper?
I honestly wholeheartedly agree. I think it's a leadership and a board question. No, because I think as humans, we mimic the behavior we see.
yeah,
Meaning, if the board starts to drive fragmentation and isolation and don't drive mutual accountability, that's going to create a cascade effect and a ripple effect across the company.
Yeah.
So I think it starts with how you're holding your leadership accountable, because if you're having fragmented bilateral conversation with IT about IT management, traditional practices, cost optimization, consolidation, rationalization, and then on the other side of the business, you're talking about revenue and growth, you're not creating that environment for where people are being aligned around the same vision, right? So I think it really starts top down. It's going to be super tough
Yeah.
in a larger company culture and company construct to rely on grassroots and bottom up thinking to drive that level of impact. It has to be
yeah.
driven top down, because
The,
people mimic behavior, and it's going to break with middle management if that's not being fully supported.
yeah, the governance should adapt to the new world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
I think
also, if I may, Rick,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry to cut you off. There's also the mindset of financial planning and how you're actually funding and driving work in organizations. We see it every single day where one is the buyer and the other one is the supplier. That's wrong, because again, it doesn't create mutual accountability, and things are treated as a project, meaning it has a start date and it has an end date,
Right.
and it has a requirement set, and there's no accountability to outcome. The entire funding cycle, the notion of business cases and holding people accountable to what the actual, call it implementation product, call it what you want, delivered. I think there is something in how the entire kind of machine is being fed as
Got
well.
it.
So it goes all the way back to how you're funding and actually driving some of your CapEx and OpEx.
And this is a sort of a parallel layer to architecture, right? Because we're talking about change, like we're talking about approvals, we're talking about change management, we're talking about capex, um, how things are invested in. We're not necessarily talking about the how it's put together,
Mm-hmm.
whether
Which
it's
is partly also I would call it a misconception of Mach Alliance, and being that's not a tech for tech conversation. That's a mindset. Equally important to how you build, it's a mindset for how to go about transformation and digitalization of your business. And that requires some of these behaviors and cultures that we're talking about. Some of that is unfortunately extremely fragile.
yeah,
It's extremely difficult because we're talking about people. I have this saying that it's easy to bend technology. You can make of it what you want. But bending people,
yeah.
that's a different challenge all by itself. It's really,
It's
really difficult.
it's interesting. I want to push on your point a little bit because I think it gets to the heart of like what the Mach Alliance is and what it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that Mach Alliance includes this part about mindset and people. And if I talk to CTOs, I was at the Mach Alliance event in Chicago, and I asked the head of user experience engineering at VF Corp. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what is a Mach Alliance for? And do you talk to your board or the CTO of EasyJet? What do you talk to your board about? Do you talk to them about the Mach Alliance? It's like I never talk to them about the Mach Alliance. I
Mm-hmm.
talk about funding structures, and so like talk to me about that distinction and that phase shift with what do you think is the purpose of the Mach Alliance, and how do you encourage the community to think about it? People who aren't in the community and people who are in the community.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, there is the mindset component is about how you approach technology. It's not a means to an end. It's a vehicle to digital business, right? So there is an outcome and an expectation attached to it. We certainly have, and that's why I've also been thankful about some of the thinking that Mariano has had in being okay. There is a education and an awareness consideration in everything that we're doing here. That also needs to be closed from our side. So I'm also completely taking accountability for there is more to do to make sure that everybody understand doing technology and deploying architecture in one way or in the Mach way, that's one thing, but you also need to embrace the right level of maturity and the right level of capability and mindset in order to master it and get value from it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I would also argue and say in a boardroom, like you're talking about more commercial, financial conversations and topics, right? Like, would I expect a boardroom to be full of like Mach Alliance logos and to be full of Mach Alliance conversation? No, absolutely not. But it needs to be something that can motivate the right thinking within teams, that can motivate the right thinking across functions and departments. I've seen firsthand in driving transformation in my daily life as well, how Mach can actually unite people around a common concept, a common definition, and a common thinking. So I see it working in that way more than I see it working as a bunch of slides that you're going to show in a boardroom in order to drive
Mm-hmm.
different funding cycles.
Mariano, how do you think about driving change? And you've been involved with the Mach Alliance in the past, and how you think about enterprise architecture in general.
For me, the word of the moment, and it will be for the next 5 years, is simplicity. It's like a extreme simplicity. The companies that do not achieve that level of simplicity will lose brand. My take on that is that brand
Hmm.
creation is not anymore in the acquisition part of the funnel.
Hmm.
That's more a math kind of equation. Brand creation is in the post purchase service, and that means simplicity. If a brand it is simple for me to interact with,
Hmm.
then the brand is amazing. If it is not simple, so one of the foundation that I work in VTEX above is consumers have more money than time. So if we deliver to our customers the ability for their customers to just interact like seamless
Mm-hmm.
in any channel possible, conversation, WhatsApp, UI, web stores, or point of sales, or no matter, doesn't matter the channel will always change. What is not changing is the simplicity that you give them the product and you solve their problems. So that's for me what will transform the good companies and bad companies for the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about transformation, and I think a lot of everything is sort of past this prologue, right? And so I think in e-commerce, we went from sort of these open source systems that were totally custom to these um, pre-built suites that were jammed together. And I'm thinking like Oracle, SAP, those sorts of things. And I think a lot of the in one direction, Mach, and the other direction, like maybe Shopify, and the SMB in the mid market, is a reaction to both of those things. Because at the end of the day, if you're Oracle, let's talk about that. They made like, a dozen or more. You probably know the answer better than me, Casper. A dozen or 2 dozen acquisitions with Endeca, and all these things add in, and they jam them together. And what's on the back of it, of course, is Oracle 11G, or like whatever the latest, greatest version of Oracle is, which creates this sort of big ball of mud. Mm-hmm. And Mariano, I guess I want to push on this situation for a retailer that has come from this and they have a mainframe, this complexity. What's the path forward? Because we're talking about blow it up or evolution and how to evolve. We talk about agile and quick changes, but if you're in this situation where you pull on one string, we've all been in these technical situations where no one understands the system because it was built by 3 generations ago of developers. And so you pull on one part of the system and it breaks. And so how do you evolve a system like that? Like, what's the path forward?
So that's more a conversation, not for 1 hour podcast, but for 3 hours whiskey. I will try to summarize in 5 minutes my vision. The way the world was structured 30 years ago was through the process. So the ERPs and the big software companies came to automate process that already exist. Marketing, sales, then operations, then delivery, then post-purchase. And so, but follow a chain of the order. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the ERP became a average software to deal with the 5 main stakeholders of a retail or brand manufacturer. And who are the 5? First, the customers. Second, the government. They need to have accountability, accounts, and pay taxes. Third is the employees. So they need to have systems that deal with employees. Fourth is the supply chain. And the 5th is stakeholder, so customer, government. Oh, is the shareholder itself, the board, the cap table. So you need to report. So those are the 5 stakeholders. Those are the ones that needs to be satisfied with a company. But actually, the ERP don't deliver the maximum value for each of the stakeholders. So what happened in the last 10 years or 15 years, layers of application came above them. For the employees, now they have Workday. For the e-commerce, they have VTEX. For the consumer, they have the customer, they have VTEX. For the government, they still have a kind of accountant system or SAP. But at the end of the day, it layers. I believe the future, Rick, is we will not have the foundations anymore. The 5 stakeholders will have their own software. So it's going to be one software to deal with the entire chain of value for the customer. One software will deal with the entire chain with supply chain, the entire chain with employees. And physical stores, they are not a channel. They are an agglomeration of process that survive, that satisfy the 5 stakeholders. So we do have employees in the point of sales. So today the point of sales needs to have one part of the point sales needs to solve when the sales guy comes in or comes out. Another part deals with customer. Another part.
I want to get back to the beginning of the question though. Like, it sounds to me like you're wishing in a way. Like, what's the path? Like, you have an ERP, now what?
Yeah, so my vision is that CDP, DW, ERP, they're gonna gone. We're gonna have one software to deal with customer, one software to deal with employees, one software to deal with supply chain, and nothing else, and one software to deal with government, and that's Oracle and SAP, QuickBooks, those kind of guys. But at the end of the day, we will not be like one layer that say, the central data. will be like that's gone. So the path is to write off the organization, the architecture, organize it by process, and organize the architecture by the stakeholder. So only one software dealing with one big purpose.
Yeah.
That's the path.
What do you think about how do you think about the path, and maybe your response, Casper?
Like you need to start somewhere, right? Because that level of change is not going to happen overnight. You can't just turn off an ERP and turn on a supply chain system the day after, right? And I'm a big believer in decomposing and starting to actually understand where do you need to have flexibility and where do you want to start to break the core. I think ERPs have, and this goes back 10 years, 15 years, I don't even know how long, has grown to something it wasn't intended to be because you had no other place to deploy technology and software at the time. So it ended up being supply chain software. It ended up being payroll software. It ended up being software that it wasn't intended to do. We need to start to break that apart again. But I think first and foremost, what you need to do is you need to understand why. What problem are you trying to solve? And then you need to find the right solution to solve for it. I see a lot of folks who go in and say, but we need to break it apart in this way without understanding, so what are we solving for? What are the customer experience implications? What is the process innovation, process automation implications? Like there needs to be a value attachment on it. And that's what's going to get you going. And you start to see some of the Forrester research on function first thinking, for instance, is actually quite good. So we don't think about systems. Like also us sitting here and talking about e-commerce. That is an ecosystem at this point in time, right? Rarely is it one system that exists within a retail brand just doing everything that has to do with e-commerce. We need to start function first because that makes us very focused and very intentional about like what problem are we actually solving for.
Yeah, and you see the disruption coming from distribution companies from China. The one thing they do really, really well is just one software dealing with customer, no matter what channel, no matter if it is pre-sales, sales, or post-sales. It's just one simple thing. And that's where PDD is. This is where JD is. So they have these as they were manufactured in a new age. They could come with a simple solution for that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because I think the question is one of potential. I mean, obviously, there's the potential to have one software, but then if the software isn't designed properly, then you're back in the same you're back in the same boat.
No, I agree. I fully agree. My point is we're gonna have 5 center spines that will be centered, but those spines they are composable by itself.
I thought you didn't like composability, Mariano. Now you're back. You wanted to decompose.
Come on.
Of course he does.
No, the composability is part of the core of VTEX since always.
I think the tagline is like composable and complete or something like that.
I know, right?
It's tagline. That's my tagline. So no, the composability it is in the heart of the bets, and companies will always need to bet. If they're going to compose with third-party systems that they're going to be in the ecosystem and out of the box tested, or if they're going to customize and create their own code, that's for the size of the companies to decide, the momentum, the cost of the money. That's a macro conditions to decide.
Yeah.
But composability will always be in the table because human beings wants to bet different approaches. The thing is, we need to be able to simplify and bounce back to a very lean operation if the test that we didn't work. So we agree on that with Casper. It's like if the outcomes on sales or profitability are not in the table, they need to bounce back to simplicity. And the problem is today is too expensive. These massive systems that they are convinced by the market to have it. So
yeah, I guess I wanted to go back to kind of the point of the problems here. One of the, even in your article, Mariano, you mentioned that Mach-like architectures are table stakes. And I guess let me start with that statement alone. I understand that the Mach Alliance is a lot of things. It's a marketing organization. It's a collection of technology enthusiasts. It's a community. It's also it's a standards and certification organization. It's a membership. It's a club at some point, because even if you get certified, you need to pay to be in. Is I can't think of a platform that isn't aligning itself around composable principles, and that has built with APIs from the front end, from the beginning, allows different user experiences. Are we on the same page about that? Whether it's Mach or Mach-like or Mach-ish?
Yeah. No, we are completely in the same page. This is what I mean. That's the new standard. Is actually because the world changed a lot in the last 7 8 years. So when Mach started, and we were like early adopters of it, we saw that the same thing that Mach and in the voice of Kelly, that was my first kind of interaction. We advocate for the same thing. Say, look, these kind of services is how you can evolve. Because if you don't go for that, you accumulate tech debt in that actually destroy business. So the foundations were a differentiation. Right now, the foundations, they are the new standards. So what's going to be the differentiation that will move retailers and brand manufacturers forward? And not only Mac, the Society of Architects, NRF, I believe we need to step forward and take the risk of doing bold statements that people will question. But that's our way to saying the world needs to evolve. And that was the main kind of the reason behind the article. It's like that was a scream of desperate, one that say we need to something new to come. And Mac is a really great instrument that can change the world of retail and manufacturing. So that was the moment I say, oh, I need to put it out.
Any thoughts, Casper, about moving forward? I know you've talked about the need for Mach to evolve. We talked in the beginning about some of the principles that were even outlined in the article, and I know have been presented at the events. How you change, why you change, something you've talked about earlier in this call. Why are we doing these things? Do we need 3 components here, or do we need 1? Is that good enough for the business?
Mhm.
Talk to me about, where do you feel Mach needs to evolve?
So there is definitely as I said, awareness thing, and just making sure the market and the industry stays fully abreast with like what the thinking and what the need
Yeah.
actually is. Like some of what I want to kind of myth bust with you guys here as well is that we're not over advocating for best of breed. Like the number of systems is not the measure of good. It's best of need. Like it has to be fit for purpose. And this is no different from the most basic principle the Mach Alliance was founded on. So whether it's 1 or 5, it comes down to what is best for business, right? Like it's not harder than that. And then I also strongly believe, and you started to talk about Mach and the Mach Alliance being a platform. Like this is a community effort. Like if we want the industry to wake up, if we want the environment to be easier for who we serve collectively, the businesses and the end consumers of those, we need to stand together. Like I think there is a big community component in this. And you heard my speech as well, Rick, at the Composable Conference. No one is going to turn the industry upside down again, may I say, like the Mach Alliance has done already, but only if we actually emphasize the alliance component. Like there is a reason for why it's not just Mach, it's Mach Alliance, it's the unity, it's the community of it.
But
So
Mariano, you're against the community. You're breaking off.
No, I made it very clear that I asked for some adjustments, and the actually the discussions that came around, it's already one of the results that I would expect. And Casper was really candid and understand and see around and say, "Oops, there are some angles that people are expecting from us that we were not communicating or we didn't know." And that was the purpose, because it became a very powerful organization, and we need to use this organization to go beyond So it's not that I'm against a club or alliance. No, no, no. I'm saying we have the opportunity to really save, I would say, hundreds of thousands of companies if we don't state for new simple architecture, new kind of a governance on data for privacy. I really believe the new discussion will not be in functionality or ecosystem. The new discussion will be around security and privacy. And because of the wars that are happening, actually, in 5 years' time from now, we're going to see Congress all over the world ruling new layers of security standards, and that's what's going to be in like what we do have today. Like GDPR will be child kind of thing. So these, we need to have a private sector representation that step forward to discuss, or even better, to curate what is to be done, to interface with the government, to interface with IFRS, US GAAP, kind of authorities that can really bring balance in the way boards will understand the numbers. So if we don't change the structure, it's like the system. The system is pretty strong. It's not. I'm not talking about technology here. It's like the system is strong.
Yeah.
We need to challenge the system. So Mach can be an instrument of it.
Yeah.
And I told Casper that I would write properly a piece of 10 pages, 15 pages, say, what can we do? And I would send him as a first person to receive it. And I commit to that. So I'm working on that. And as soon as I have it done, Casper will be the first one to receive these.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, I think part of this here, it sounds like we're having a similar conversation, and I think the principles are similar. So do you think that there's a possibility for VTEX and Mach to work together again in the future?
I see 100% possibility. I make it very clear in the post that say as soon as we see that Mach is open to discuss these deep kind of things, we would be back. And I not only in the Casper's voice, but I receive a lot of feedbacks that say, "Wow, this discussion needs to happen. This discussion needs to happen. Security, or AI, or architecture, or the limit of the cost. What's the cost that can have for a commerce or customer software? It's a 10%, it's a 5%, it's a 2%. So if we don't advocate for the economic value for that, and that I fully agree with Casper, like the outcome, it is what matters. It's not the architecture
Right.
or one or two or 10. It's the outcome. Is the outcome creating profitability? Is the outcome creating sales possibility? If it is okay, then go for it. So,
So I guess I wanted to push on this a little bit. The outcomes are obviously important. Technologists don't necessarily own all the outcomes. We're part of a ecosystem. I think is we would all agree. And so one of the if a project fails and it's a monolith project, or if a project fails, and it's a more composable oriented project, regardless of the number of components in the project, what does that have to do with, are we building the right thing or not? Number one. And then what does that have anything to do with the Mach Alliance and advocating for better architecture?
I do have one that I was explicit in the article is, for example, the time of implementation. I believe we need to revisit the most kind of successful projects, and I can quote public ones. We put 5 countries of Walmart in 4 months, all of them parallel, full integrated, full migration, 4 months, done. We put H&M 4 months live. So many big companies are achieving to go live fully integrated in a fraction of the time that used to be before. That obviously will affect, and that's the trend. It will not stop in four. I foresee, Rick, a future where clients will migrate platforms in 20 days. All the integration layers by agent, all the front end migration by agent, And all the big SIs like Valtech are reinventing themselves and putting a step forward inside the client, not only to deliver integration but operate systems. So we're gonna see a reinvention of the roles of the industry. Where my bet, that's a personal bet, the clients, the customers will have less employees to the revenue and profit that they generate. Doesn't mean that the employees will be out of work. No, they're going to be redirect to other areas, but the operation, the revenue per employee in brands and retailers will be much higher than it is today. And for that, they need the resources that will come from system integrators, that will come from providers in a highly connected ecosystem. So this is the future I foresee. And the Mach.
How do you think about, I guess, the role? I mean, you have a little bit of a dual role here with Valtech and the Mach Alliance. How do you see the role of system integrators evolving? I guess maybe to start with, and as well as what role do you see as Mach Alliance? Call it as a one of the roles I see of the alliance is a ecosystem curator to some extent. What's that role?
So I think the systems integration components, meaning the type of company that clients and end users are partnering with in order to do modernization and do digital environments, that's going to go away. And it's going to be about strategic partnerships and business partnerships more than anything, meaning even our contracts. And it exists today. Like, we're not just driving T&M for the sake of, and not just writing code for the sake of. There is skin in the game. There is performance components. There are outcome-based agreements in between us, right? So we're starting to get to a place where we actually operate in faith of outcome and impact. Like, it's no different. I also think from a Mach Alliance standpoint, what we need to recognize is just like composability were to monolithic thinking, a paradigm shift, so is agentic thinking to business. And all of us, Valtech included, need friends and alliance in order to redefine what it means to interoperate as an ecosystem with a cohesive, strong voice towards the market that we're serving. What are the commercial models going forward that's going to be best for industry? That's not something Valtech will create in itself and on our own. It's something that we need to create with our peers and our partners out there. So the alliance also plays a role in the reinvention that we see of enterprise technology as being kind of the industry that we're all representing in our other day jobs, if I might, at least from my standpoint.
Yeah, remember when the audit companies like PwC, before that was another name, right? When they started, they were just doing audit. Then they migrate to be consultant, and then they migrate to be BPOs. So they came from something that they audit to something that they operate. At the end of the day, this is a future that I foresee for many system integrators. They're gonna operate, and because they're gonna consolidate the knowledge in the level that today the knowledge is expressed by a human labor. Tomorrow, that knowledge will be expressed by a digital labor, and but it's labor, it's service, but in a way that today the company needs to scale and go inside, and it's very complicated for a company that have 10,000 employees to have 9,000 on a third party basis. They just don't go for that. So they hire. But in the future, to have a 10,000 employees where 9,000 are digital labors provided by someone or some company, that's going to be completely understandable. So that is the shift I see, and might take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I don't know. The time
Yeah.
is unpredictable, but it's a bold trend. It's something that it's happening. It's not like a romanticizing thing. It's for real. It's gonna be fun in the next 15 years to see brands being operated by 50 people, 100 people, and $3 billion brand operated by 50 people. It can happen.
I mean, I think it's interesting, and I in that world, Does M become MCP? What happens here, Casper?
I think modularity, not that that's what the M means, but modularity is a common concept also in agentic, right? Because you're talking about the agents being outcome oriented, like they are decision and outcome oriented. So that requires some degree of responsibility to be assigned, no different from how we've been historically thinking about systems needing responsibility too. So I think the principles stand true, to be honest. The question is, what does future fit mean? And I think agent and agentic ready enterprises is something that's going to come up. So we can also be a partner in crime with end users and members in what does the level of reinvention actually mean. So folks are not sitting on their own and trying to figure out what their destiny is. So I think the principles stand. They are agentic compatible, if you can call it that way. I actually think they are the foundation and the pure premise of agentic thinking. And then the alliance element of it is really, again, the community in doing it together as a wider industry. So we're not all simply sitting and creating our own destination. I think we all need to cooperate and collaborate
Yeah.
as we do that.
The way I see that is that the elements that compound the name actually doesn't matter. It's for me, the way I see is a modern architecture curating high performance, and that's gonna be a Mach
I like
forever because
that.
that's gonna be a Mach forever because today is an agent. In 3 years' time, who knows? It's another type of architecture. So always we'll be surrounding a architecture discussion to high
Yeah.
performance.
I
So
didn't think this podcast would come out of the rebranding the Mach Alliance.
No,
no,
I was also like,
just,
are you an
we
old
just
brand
did
person,
it.
Mariano? There's something I don't know.
but because it's a future proof, like this is
Yeah.
what state before, and that's actually what it is. So, and this kind of discussion, if it is open, that's the kind of we are privileged, right, to have these kind of discussions in open channels. And before was a kind of a room that we need to align, and now we can do this in a live session. That's the beauty of the era that we are living in. And people say, no, there is a lot of noise. Come on, noise sometimes is good. So that's the beauty of it. And thanks for the space, Rick. I know that.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to be able to provide this and hopefully provide some useful elements to the audience to think about where the industry is going, because I think regardless of how you think, both of you guys will definitely be out there in the field trying to push the industry forward. I think that's definitely true. Any other last words, Casper?
No, we won't stop. Let me say it that way.
That's great. Well, I appreciate this has been a great podcast talking about the future of architecture. How do we adapt to the world that we find ourselves in with agentic commerce? Some of the discussion that's been happening between Mariano and the Mach Alliance, the future of the Mach Alliance in general, and how do businesses generate better outcomes is really, I think, the end result. Agent or no agent, they're still going to be corporations. So,
And Rick, allow
Great
me to
summary.
say one thing. That post generate like a kind of extreme polarization, and I believe what the world don't need right now is more polarization. We already have those kind of extremes in politics in many ways, and I
yeah.
believe that's what the world is losing. So I want to just recognize Casper and the Mac Alliance overall on the grown-up conversation and interpretation from that article, and don't
Yeah.
be contaminated by the
Yeah.
polarization and kind of the extremes of it. And that's the world needs. So thank you, Caspers, and thank you,
Oh, of
Rick, to
course.
be
Yeah.
mediating this.
Yeah. I think we're all familiar with what social media does. It tends to amplify the most polarizing views.
Yeah.
And I think, the algorithms definitely tend to reward that situation, and commenters on that post and elsewhere often have their own incentives.
Yeah.
Right. And so ultimately, hopefully we can get back to thinking rationally and about where the future is going. So again, I thank everyone for the time today, and looking forward to seeing you guys again soon.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the show. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed creating it. Next week we have a whopper for you. We're going deep on Shopify editions. We're going to have a strong guest panel as ever. Only one thing left for me to do. Well, two, I guess. I want to thank our sponsors, Miracle. They've been amazing, as always, in supporting us on this journey. Thanks to our hosts, to our guests, to everybody who's been involved and for you for participating. Now there's only one thing left for me to do. Now I'm going to try and do it without any music.